Welcome back to the Marvel Movie Minute, a daily podcast in which we assemble to explore the films of the Marvel Cinematic Universe 1 minute at a time. In this, our 6th season, we are looking at the Avengers. I'm Andy Nelson from the Next Reel Film Podcast.
I'm Pete Wright, and she didn't come to my house.
Today we're talking about Minute 16, which begins with Strike Team Delta's Abidjan operation and ends with a sick kid in bed. Back on the show to kick things off this week, we have Phillip Mottaz again. Hello, Phillip.
Hello, Andy and Pete.
Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. It's Monday, you guys.
It is Monday.
So
we are ending our time with Natasha at this scene as we kick things off here. It's her conversation with Coulson kind of catching up. Now, I think it's interesting that the whole thing with Barton being compromised is kind of what set Natasha off and said, oh, whatever mission I'm on, which obviously was important, she was trying to get information. And then they're like, oh, no, we think Barton's actually okay. And that's kind of how this conversation starts. It's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, we think he's fine. We'll tell you when you get here.
I can see that. I don't think it's manipulative, though. I would say it's similar to, like, we've kidnapped your wife. She is alive. You know, like, it's a little different. Because all he said was compromise. So that, I guess that could mean absolutely anything.
Sure.
It got her on the working on the case. So it did its job.
He did what he needed to do, and now she's going to go do what she needs to do. And that is to go talk to the big guy. Now, I think it's funny. There's this confusion about who the big guy is, because her thoughts of the big guy is that it's Tony Stark, because, you know, I guess it's his personality. She's worked with him before. But that whole idea of first we need you to talk to the big guy. I mean, it could have been Fury. Does it seem like a logical assumption for her to have thought of Bruce Banner?
I can see why you would. Yeah, there's a bunch of people. You'd have to. A better line might have been, you have to be way more specific, Coulson.
Right. Is that level 7 or?
Is that level 7? Yeah, no, it makes for a sort of a funny joke. And I do like the setup and the way that almost everybody in this movie is really watching themselves around Bruce Banner. That's a fun thing to be like. Especially Natasha, where, like, I am a mere human being who doesn't have cybernetic armor or super serum or anything. So I have to really be careful around this nuclear bomb of a person. But yeah, I'm. You could have meant anybody, whatever she knows.
Yeah, I think that it's interesting the way that it plays. I mean, it's obviously designed to be kind of fun scripting, you know, the talk to the big guy, and then the whole thing.
No. I mean, to its
Stark.
credit, it is fun.
Yeah,
you know?
right. Because then he says, "Oh no, I've got Stark. You get the big guy," and then you get that Russian.
Says the big guy twice, right?
Yeah,
big guy.
Right,
no,
right.
You get big guy.
Well, to her, big guy means Stark.
No, I know. I
and
just mean like the fact that he says we need you to talk to the big guy, and she says Stark, and he says again, "No, I've got Stark. You get the big guy." It just screams to me that I want, like, I don't know what it would be, like the really big guy or the exceptionally big guy or the other big guy. Right.
She could have gone, oh, you mean Fury? No.
Right,
you get the big guy. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Know what I mean?
Like, wait, Iron Man's buddy War Machine?
Oh, Thor. I thought he was off-world.
Yeah, exactly.
Off-world?
Yeah,
they just keep running through. Do we have Spider-Man yet? To this, I don't mean to blow through it too fast, but one thing that it's contained in this minute that is sort of strange, and it almost comes off as a strange choice with this, like, not saying the Incredible Hulk or Bruce Banner, is that this is going to be the first time we see Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner. And in this minute, if you didn't know that there'd been a recasting, it was just like, who's this dude?
Yeah.
Like, what? I don't know who this person is.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah. So, I mean, just to finish this up before we get into him. So she figures out who he means, and when she says you get the big guy, and she's got the little Russian line where she says, I don't know, it's in Russian, but basically it's like, oh my God.
Bozhe moi.
Bozhe moi.
My God.
Yeah, so she's not thrilled about what has been tasked to her. And so now she's going to have to deal with this. And what's interesting, but again, was never part of this franchise. I think it was only in a comic addition to it was that she was at Culver University when Bruce Banner hulked out and had his battle with Blonsky when he was a super soldier, before he was like super abomination super soldier. And so she was there. She saw what he could do. And, as you said, Philip, she is just a little human up against this giant monster. And so there is that sense when she says, my God, this is a person who knows kind of what she's actually going to have to face right now.
Credit to the cinematography of it too, because it kind of, when she says that line, it's in that really wide shot, and you don't exactly see, the three guys she just laid out, but you get the sense that it was like she just cleared a room with barely breaking a sweat, and now she's nervous.
Yeah,
that does communicate something. I mean, I knew who she was going to get by this point when I was watching the movie, but that was because I knew the Hulk was in the movie.
Well, and I do like that visual indicator, whoever she's going to get is going to need a bigger space than, and so they pull out visually to tease that. I think that I've always been really attracted to that, using that sense of space to tease the physicality of what comes next. It's very cool.
I want to go backwards for just a minute, if I can, Andy, because if nothing else, I just like this idea that when she takes up the phone and she asks where Barton is, then you get this shot to what I'm calling shield YouTube, which is
yeah, right.
Like how you or I might look up highlights of old Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan plays. I guess Agent Coulson looks up Strike Team Delta with the most generic name ever, and just clips of them firing at will at people. Yeah. I never noticed it again until we do a minute by minute, but I'm like, that is pretty silly. What? Whose camera is this?
Yeah, right. If anything, though, there is our shot of Clint Barton using his bow and arrow.
Yeah, we got it.
That's the first time we actually see him in this franchise wielding a bow and arrow and shooting with it. So
okay, see,
it's in
I love it.
It's in Abidjan. This is the Ivory Coast, and they were on a mission there. It's just called the Abidjan Operation. And Strike Team Delta, it's just the Marvel Wiki is written in a way where this is something important, but all the information we actually have is from this one shot in the Avengers. So we're going to pretend it's important, but we don't really know what's going on either.
Right.
It's really funny.
Half a wall in front of them is really important to the legacy of their friendship.
Well, I do think it's fun that they went to some length to put these characters in the same, even shot from the omniscient cameraman perspective, that they are in roughly the same kind of orientation that they are later in the film. I think that's nice.
And
it's a setup callback that isn't a callback to anything other than this 3 seconds, right? But it works.
And it is a visual way of doing it rather than us having Natasha say, Coulson, Cliff and I go way back to that mission we did in Strike Team Delta,
with all that rubble. It was a
with
big
all that
rubble mission.
Yeah. Remember the Rubble Mission? Yeah. It just struck me as funny. I was like, I don't know, this is the movie that we're in where there's going to be monsters and Norse gods and stuff. I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, we caught these super spies on camera somehow. That happens.
Yeah. What's funny is that they're on again, going to the Marvel Wiki, it talks about how that's satellite footage of them. And I'm like, is that how satellite footage looks?
Satellite in that the camera was rotating around them as they were doing it.
Yeah, DJI is big with the gimbals. That's all we need to know.
That's right. Well, we go from Russia to the streets of Calcutta in India, and this is where we jump into, again, en media res. We're following a little girl as she is running through the streets, and we get a sense of kind of the location. For a scene designed to just sell us on a place, they do a great job with giving us a sense of this location. We get the bustling streets. It feels a little rundown. You've got, just cyclists and people walking through. It looks very much like kind of a market. And we're following this little girl who looks very troubled. And my first question for both of you regarding our little girl here, and don't worry, we'll do the IMDb game with her and the mom or the woman. Before we get to that, though, how do you feel on rewatch of this scene, knowing what we know about this little girl and her role in what's about to play. Does it make sense for her to be running through the streets looking like somebody who is agonizing about her sick father as we're seeing it play out here?
Oh, as opposed to her...
As opposed to an actress saying, I was just paid. Yeah, I just need to show up in this place and say these lines. But on the streets, it's like no one's watching her. And
yeah, sure. She's a really committed actor. How do I feel about it? I would say this. I always kind of get fooled by it. I go into it, which I guess is the point. In universe, I suppose I could justify it that like they told her, this person is really smart and they're gonna be very suspicious. So I need you to like be on the whole time. I can see that, like just before this cut, like is where she did her method acting move to be like, okay, now I'm a distressed young kid and I'm running. But I see your point that, yeah, there's another version of this that maybe started in the place where Banner is, and this girl just entered. So then we could assume that she was not game face before then. But then you don't get that great, just like hustle and bustle.
Yeah, you get the tour, right? The location. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that happens in movies that anytime I'm rewatching a movie and I'm in a situation like this where I am forced to ask, why is this person acting this way when when no one is around? They're clearly, and this happens often in movies where there's somebody who you think is the bad guy, but it's really this other person who's the bad guy. But they have they acted like they were totally surprised and all this stuff in other scenes where no one's around. It's like, but they've been the bad guy. Why would they be acting that way if they're by themselves? So I always question that in these films where it's clearly they're designed just for the audience to be fooled.
Yes.
And, it's one of those things. I roll my eyes at it, but I just acknowledge that it's a cinematic tool.
I can appreciate that too. It is kind of silly. And it's funny, you could have almost gotten away with it had you not cut to the little girl's face so early.
Yes.
If
absolutely.
it had just been her running,
totally,
you could have been like, oh, kids run, people run. That's fine. And then show her face when she enters.
Wow, I think you just fixed it.
Yeah, totally fixes it. But I wonder how fixed it is, because there is I can see, making the argument that the audience needs to be primed, like in an emotional state of being ready for sadness and grief and rescue, like so that we're along the ride with the girl, even though she ends up, betraying Banner. She's also betraying us. Right? Like that sadness that she portrays for Banner, it's the cry in the street that she betrays us as the audience.
Do you think that this little girl still carries that on her shoulders, that she's betrayed entire audiences full of people?
I think she's still crying. She can't run. Yeah, she can't run without crying anymore, actually.
Oh,
it's a really sad thing.
It's a very unique condition.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. And I think part of that too goes into our introduction to Bruce Banner himself, where, I mean, it's as simple as like, are you going to be nice to the clearly distressed little kid?
Yeah.
Like now we're on your side, like we can relate, or, him as a heroic person just by virtue of that. So it seems like those choices outweigh the hard logic of like, really, this little kid should be counting her dollars before she walks in and then goes in.
Because that story is a different story. That's like a Slumdog Millionaire story. And that's not why we're here.
It's not why we're here. Well, this little actress is Mala Kaur Singh. She's playing young girl in this film. And
I remember her from
Young Girl.
I'm sure you do. Sure you do. I'm going to tell you her four known fors because you're not going to know them. And she hasn't been performing. She started performing at a fairly young age, even younger than this, and then only worked for about 6 years. So her four known fors are the Avengers.
The Avengers, yeah.
Of course.
I got that right. And then
there you go. She was in Doom 3.
Doom 3.
A Bollywood film where she plays young girl. Is it the same young girl, though? That's
she
what
just kept running.
Keeps me up at night.
Does the young girl in Doom 3 cry when she runs?
I'm going to have to watch it and find out.
Yeah.
She was in Killer Punjabi, And she played Rita's child
killer.
sidekick in that one.
Yeah,
right?
That was good.
And last but not least, she was in the TV series Sirens, where she played Susan in one episode.
Yeah.
That's Mala Kaur Singh. Now, she runs into this house, and whoever the man is who speaks doesn't get credited. He has a line that's not even subtitled, but I'm guessing it's like, hey, what are you doing here? Something like that. But Calcutta Woman is up there, and that's Rashmi Rustagi. Rashmi Rustagi, again, things that I'll just tell you. The Avengers, of course, number one. Second, Grey's Anatomy. She was in one episode of Grey's Anatomy. Third, she was in the TV series Never Have I Ever. And last but not least, she was in the movie India, Sweets and Spices.
Go back a second. Who does she play in Never Have I Ever?
She plays Prashant's mother in 2 episodes. Does that help at all? She's also credited as Older Indian Woman.
Maybe those were, she's Older Indian Woman in one and Prashant's mother in another.
Mother. Yeah.
If I'm thinking of Never Have I Ever, that's the show that is on. Oh my God. Okay. Wait. No, I don't know if this is the same actor. Never Have I Ever is a sitcom. I think I'm thinking of the right one. That Mindy Kaling produced on Netflix. It's very funny. It's a coming of age show. Oh, okay. So she's all right. She isn't who I thought she was. I just looked her up.
Okay. Yeah.
But Never Have I Ever is very funny. If for no other reason, watch the pilot because it's literally about an Indian family living in America, Indian Americans, and the girl is, I think she's 16 years old, and her life is narrated by John McEnroe. And it is hilarious. They use it so well because McEnroe will say things like, Davey was troubled, but like any coach will tell you at the U.S. Open, you got to dig in and get your court shoes. It doesn't relate at all to it. It's just, it's fantastic. It's like he was cursed to narrate the life of a teen girl, and it's
that's
very
amazing.
That is so funny. God, that's genius.
And then look out for Prashant's mom.
That's right.
Yeah, and Prashant's mom, season 2. That's right. Well, last but not least, the last IMDb game is, of course, with Mark Ruffalo, who is entering the Marvel Cinematic Universe for the first time right here in this very minute. So, for the two of you, this is a game you can play. Mark Ruffalo, IMDb, what would you say IMDb says are his 4 known fors?
The Avengers.
Yeah. I'm in on the Avengers.
Spotlight. Thor Ragnarok. And
what about something like one of those like Begin Again or was he in Once? No, he wasn't in Once.
He was not in Once.
He was in Begin Again.
Yeah, Begin Again is like American Once, right?
Yeah, right.
And his first big thing was it You, Me, and Everyone I Know, or You Can Count on Me? One of those long
You Can Count on Me is, that was 2000. I mean, he's been in films since 94, so he's been around for quite a while, but you're right. You Can Count on Me is really where things kind of pop.
The Avengers, I'm going to throw in Begin Again and Now You See Me. One of the Now You See, that was a big one. Right?
Oh
that
my
was
God.
Long enough ago, right?
Yeah, okay. I'm going to stick... get all your picks.
No, go ahead. What's your? What do you?
No, I was gonna take definitely the Avengers. I'm gonna also say Thor Ragnarok. You Can Count on Me, and
you had said Spotlight, I think.
Spotlight, yeah, that's it.
And Spotlight,
yeah,
those are my 4.
Yeah.
Okay. Pete.
Oh,
are you going with those, or do you have your own 4?
I agree with those because one, most importantly, I can't remember any other Mark Ruffalo movies.
Okay, you had Now You See Me also.
Oh yeah, I want that.
So
on the list. Is that okay?
That's our decider, I think.
So I agree with Spotlight and the Avengers and Begin Again and Now You See Me. So whatever that other one that Phillip said, toss that out.
Well, the 4 are Spotlight is on there for sure.
Okay.
Second one, The Kids Are All Right.
Wow,
I never saw that.
Yeah, from 2010. Great movie.
Okay.
Then The Avengers, and last but not least, Foxcatcher.
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 I would have picked that, except his performance in that movie really annoys me.
Well, Foxcatcher, Spotlight, and The Kids Are All Right are the 3 films he was nominated for Oscars for. So it makes sense to a certain extent that those three.
The Oscars can be wrong.
I couldn't say
Yeah, I'm just saying
so.
there's reason that those three are probably on his list.
Sure. Yeah, you're right.
But that's Mark Ruffalo. Now, Mark Ruffalo, you, I don't know, threw a little bit of shade at Ruffalo yesterday as far as Hulk. Where do you stand with him taking over from Edward Norton?
I only did it for the sake that I think they are very like equal standing as far as like movie star and act. Like I like both of them a lot. Although that's not to say that oh no, now I'm totally blanking on his name. The guy who originally played Rhodey. He was in Empire and what's that guy's
Terrence
name?
Howard.
Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard's good too. I feel like just Don Cheadle is more of an established movie star. So there the trade becomes a trade up.
Mm-hmm.
With Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo, I feel like it's a little like even in terms of status. But I like Mark Ruffalo in general, and I do like him as Bruce Banner here. And again, I still have not seen The Incredible Hulk, but what I know about it and what I know about like Ed Norton in general is it seems like a very different character than the one that Mark Ruffalo is playing, which is like a sort of nebbish scientist who knows he has to be really careful about where he's putting his concentration. And so like that is a different type of intensity than the intensity I usually get from Ed Norton, which is, I don't want to say surface level, but more like outwardly intense. Just in my experience. But no, I like Mark Ruffalo. I think I totally get why they got him. Well, for a number of reasons, but I think it was a good choice.
I wonder if we're going to run into anyone this season, Pete, who would rather have seen Eric Bana come back.
I'm one of those people, Andy. You don't have to look very far. I loved Eric Bana. I loved Eric Bana in this role so much. I think, though, speaking just of Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo, the problem is that Edward Norton has a corner on being on the run. Like, he looks just like dirty and sweaty, and he's like really hiding and running up and down the streets. Like, he nails wearing a hoodie and hiding behind a tree. Like, that's kind of his jam. And I cannot picture Ruffalo in that same space. Like, Ruffalo is like, I think he's playing this character who would be completely oblivious that he needs to be on the run. Like, he'd rather be in the lab and he's doing his thing, but I don't think he's a guy who is going to be aware that he needs to put the hoodie up and go hide behind a tree at any given moment.
I can totally get that. And it kind of speaks to what you might be pointing out is something that down the road, I think they maybe stumble with the treatment of the Hulk. And I really enjoy Endgame by the time you get there. But one thing that I was always kind of like, didn't sit right with me was that, spoiler alert for Endgame, but that they make him into the cross between Banner and the Hulk. And my first thought was like, oh, you just made everything easier.
Yes.
You know, it's like, now you don't have to worry about that problem. But it was like, that's the most interesting part about the Incredible Hulk is that at any moment, this guy could explode and tear up your whole lab. But instead, they're like, what if we wrote that out? And you're like, oh, I guess. Yeah. And so in a way, that speaks to what you're talking about, I think, Pete, which is that, you know, like they're already kind of getting away from that he's not quite on the run with a hoodie up. He's just not in New York.
Yeah.
You know, doing other work and keeping sort of low profile. But I mean,
even
still,
when we meet him in Calcutta, he looks pretty chill. He's helping people. He's behind bedside. He's got some chill. And so I feel like that's the issue. But I do love Ruffalo in the part. And he has possibly the best hero moment in the movie later in the movie. And so I really credit to him for that. And I actually think his addition to She-Hulk was terrific. So I'm a fan of him in the part, but I totally get what you're saying. Like, going the Professor Hulk route takes the character in a completely different direction. And I don't know, I wouldn't say I'm like concerned about where that direction ultimately leads us, but I wonder if everybody knows.
It's not the biggest deal, but I'm pointing it out because I think what you're picking up from, you know, this move from like hoodie up, got to hide behind trees, to a little more casual is like, oh, that's just the more casualness
Yes.
down the road.
Well,
you know?
and you know what you made a point that I hadn't put in words myself yet, but what I miss about subsequent Hulk portrayals is the intensity with which everybody is scared to be around Banner in this movie. That is a thing that is additive to this movie in a really great way. Like it makes everybody kind of on tenterhooks. And I think there's some of that, like that doesn't carry on at all. The more control he gets over his Jekyll and Hyde-ness, the less interesting he becomes.
Yeah, and that's a big shift with the character that, you know, I think a lot of that pulls from even like the TV series, because Hulk, I mean, Jesus, he transformed so much. It was a completely different actor who was performing him.
Yeah.
But he was just a mindless Hulk who would just go and destroy things and smash. And that was the crux of the character. And that's what I found interesting about this film. Bringing up Bill Bixby, though, Mark Ruffalo had this to say as far as his portrayal of it, that I think some of what you're saying, Pete, comes out of this. He said, quote, "We had talked about it being a throwback to Bill Bixby, which was the Banner that I grew up on, basically. He had kind of a charm about him and this world weariness. He was on the run, but he was still able to flirt sometimes and smile sometimes, and occasionally he'd crack a joke."
I can see it. I guess.
Weirdly non-committal, I guess.
Well, but I think, like, I don't necessarily feel like I would have heard that out of Edward Norton's mouth. You know, I feel like Edward Norton, to your point, did capture a lot of that essence of the guy who was on the run, and Ruffalo settled into the guy who's just in hiding, but he's helping people. That Bill Bixby TV show, you know, the lonely man walking slowly away from whatever scene, never running. And so it is interesting that I think that I can feel what you're saying in that sense with the way that Ruffalo portrays him.
This might sort of undersell Ed Norton's comedic chops, because the guy can be really funny.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
But I guess I've always painted him in this corner of being rather an actor's actor and like sort of an intense guy. And it almost doesn't suit the overall tone that we're going for with this movie and every movie after it going forward. You know, it's like at some point, you don't need quite so much of that. We're trying to do something else here entirely. So maybe whatever X factor that is, Ruffalo fits the bill a little more than Edward Norton too.
Well, this is our introduction to him in this film. We're going to be talking a lot more about him over the course of it, but I do like the way that it is introduced in a way where he's helping people. There's a sick kid in the bed, and this little girl needs some help. And that's where the minute ends. I think it plays really nicely. And I don't know. I think that this is a good place to wrap things up as any. So Philip, thank you so much for joining us for all of these episodes. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you for having me.
Totally.
No, it was a lot of fun. I've enjoyed listening to the show, and now I'll hear myself, I guess. However that goes. But yeah, thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun.
We'll tell everybody one last time where they can track your books down and just a little bit about them.
What books? No, I am also a mystery author, and my books are about a woman who is a hairstylist by day, but she has secret psychic abilities, and she uses them to help solve murders in and around Los Angeles. It's called the Psychic Barber Mysteries, and the first one is titled The Murderous Haircut of the Mayor of Bel Air. Is everywhere that you can find it. Look me up. I'm at Phillip Mottaz on Twitter and Instagram, and I got a website and all that sort of stuff.
Fantastic. Well, check it out. The links will be in the show notes, and give him a read. We'd love to support him and what he's up to, keep him busy with these things.
Yeah.
As for us, we'll be back tomorrow to talk about Minute 17 with another guest. We have Ryan Dalton joining us for a couple minutes, so it should be fun chatting with him. Oddly, another author. So I guess it's Author Week this week. But that's it for us today. We'll be back tomorrow. Pete, thanks as always.
Andy, I've spiked a fever. Go get Scarlet.
Until next time, true believers.
Marvel Movie Minute is a production of True Story FM, engineering by Andy Nelson. This season's music is Message to the World by Anthony Vega, and this season's show art is by Winston Yabo. Find the show at truestory.fm. If your podcast app allows ratings and reviews, please consider doing that for our show.